and things like that. We're gonna save all that for the mentorship though. But you know, just keep that in mind. All right, so 15 USC 1681N, civil liability for willful non-compliance. Before I continue, any questions? That's me wanting to take a water break. I'm talking like crazy. Any questions? All right, let's continue because we got some other things we got to cover. I don't want to keep y'all here all night. 1681N, civil liability for willful non-compliance. So willful non-compliance, what does that mean? You're willfully not compliant. So in general, this is what we're going to read real quick. Any person, remember what we said person means earlier? It could be a corporation, it could be an individual, it could be whatever. When we're looking at person, we're looking at Experian, we're looking at Bank of America, we're looking at the people that violated us. Any person, any means no restriction. Remember that. Any person who willfully fails to comply with any requirement imposed under this subchapter with respect to any consumer is liable to that consumer in an amount equal to the sum of what? Any actual damages. So A1A is your sauce. B has some even more sauce. But A1A, any actual damages sustained by the consumer as a result of the failure or damages of not less than $100 and not more than $1,000. So in A1A, they're saying the damages that come to you can't be more than $1,000. Why do you think Congress said that? You got to read between the lines. The reason why Congress put that there is because they understand that you could be violated way more than $1,000. Let me give y'all a scenario. Let's say I'm in a situation where I have a late payment. Let's say I have a late payment and it stopped me from getting an approval for a house. Is any house going to be just $1,000? That damage is going to be way more than $1,000. What if I lost out on $500,000 house? So Congress, by putting that A section, they understand, they limited, the damage because they understand the fact that you're going to sustain damages that are greater than $1,000. What if I'm sleeping at night and I'm just like, dang, I got a denial. And, I have mental damages. I have mental anguish. I'm scared to see what's on my consumer report. Mental damages are going to be way worth more than $1,000. So just really keep that in mind and read between the lines in the civil liability sections. So let's go to B though. B is even, more sauce. So in the case of liability of a natural person for obtaining, okay, let's go back to what it said earlier. Any person who willfully fails to comply, right? In the case of liability of a natural person for obtaining a consumer report under false pretenses or knowingly without a permissible purpose, actual damages sustained by a consumer as a result of the failure or $1,000, whichever is greater. So when it comes to the civil liability section for willful non-compliance, you want to use section B. Why do I say that? Let's go back to my example with the house. They said it's going to be a damage of $1,000, but whichever is greater, right? If I lost out on a $500,000 house, is that not greater than $1,000? So you got to understand the language that Congress is saying. Congress tossed you the alley-oop. It's just for you to understand what's going on. So when you are talking about civil liability section, let's say you're not getting, your desired result as far as the deletions. Because number one, I want y'all to focus on deletions. Focus on deletions, and then you can go for the money after. Focus on deletions first. Master the deletions. So let's say they don't want to remove an inquiry, right? You're going to bring them to the civil liability section. You could use A and be like, oh, it's going to be $1,000. Or you could even use B and be like, this inquiry stopped me from getting an approval. Now I'm on the streets or something. I wasn't able to get my house or something like that, right? Just really point them and let them know that whichever is greater portion of it, and break it down to them. You got to break it down to them because most people don't understand these laws or what they even mean. So you got to really break it down in layman's terms. And that's the whole purpose of this introduction class. We're going to have a separate class, like I said, as far as remedy. I have a client right now that's being sued. But yeah, we're gonna go through that and just the process of how I would go about that personally. So yeah, that's 1681N, civil liability section. Have this in your tool belt and understand that the civil liability section in the Truth in Lending Act is 15 USC 1640. Civil liability section in the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act is 15 USC 1692K. So both of those sections, Fair Credit Reporting Act, or Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, and Truth in Lending Act. Both of those sections have one apiece, civil liability section. But the Fair Credit Reporting Act is special because they have two. They have 1681N, they have 1681O. Let's see if they'll let me go right away to it. Okay, yeah. So civil liability for negligent noncompliance. So not only can you hit them for willful noncompliance, you can hit them for negligent noncompliance. You're being negligent if you're not deleting that item I told you to delete after I proved to you that it's inaccurate. What is inaccurate? Something that is not of value to me as a consumer. Remember, accuracy means a measure of value. We're not talking about correct. We're not talking about something that's right. We're talking about Black Law's Dictionary. Accuracy is a measure of value. Is it valuable to you as a consumer? Is it valuable to have an inquiry that's holding me back from getting what I need to get? That's a question you need to ask yourself. So any person who is negligent in failing to comply with any requirement imposed under this subchapter with respect to any consumer is liable to that consumer in an amount equal to the sum of, listen, any actual damage sustained by the consumer as a result of the failure, right? So any actual damages. So again, they're just reiterating the fact that you can get these furnishers of the information, meaning like Bank of America, whoever put the inquiry, or these CRAs, consumer reporting agencies, you can get them in trouble based off of these sections if they're failing to delete the information you tell them to delete. So second one is important too. In the case of any successful action to enforce any liability under this section, the cost of the action together with reasonable attorney's fees as determined by the court. So I wouldn't necessarily use number 2. I just want to point it out to you because it says in the case of any successful action. Any successful action. Why is that different from number 1? Number 2 is different from number 1 because number 2 has to be a successful action. So you have to be successful in, your debate with the court. But number 1 says any actual damages. You as a consumer, you're always successful because you define actual damages, right? So really keep that in mind. So I just want y'all to understand when it comes to number 2, it has to be a successful action. Not to say that it can't be a successful action, but to me, I like to go with what's easy. What's easy is I could just say, oh, I sustained mental damages. I wasn't able to get an approval for what I got. But with number 2, it has to be successful action. Successful action meaning that's determined based off of someone else's perception. You don't want to be in a situation where it's determined based off of someone else's perception. So yeah, keep that in mind. We're gonna go over one more law, and then we're gonna go to the next section. I believe that is S2. Let me make sure on my list right here. Yeah, S-2. Okay, so this one is some real